Good afternoon and welcome to Smart Music's webinar on developing a student practice plan for remote learning. My name is Michaela Graham, Senior Event Specialist for Make Music, and I will be running everything in the background for our session today. Before we get started, I would like to give you just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions or comments for our presenters throughout the session, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. We have Billy Lawler joining us today on the back end to answer any Smart Music questions directly in the chat box. We will have a short time for Q&A at the very end, but our presenters will be answering some questions in the chat throughout as well. At the very top of the chat box, I've inserted a link to a PDF of our main Google Slide presentation today. This file contains most of the links and resources mentioned in the session for you to reference at a later time, and it includes both the presentations from Anthony and Casey. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the presenters for our session today. We have Casey Goryeb from Hackettstown, New Jersey. She's a pre-K to 5 music teacher and director of choral music at an elementary school out in New Jersey. So go ahead and say hi, Casey.
Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here.
All right. We also have Anthony Granata from Monroe, Connecticut. Go ahead and say hi, Anthony. Oh, I can't hear you. This is our test. There you go.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well.
Awesome. And you can see on his title there, he teaches basically everything. He directs basically everything, which is amazing. I'm super excited to hear from Anthony today. And we also have Glenn Pollin from Iowa. He's a professor of music and director of instrumental music over at Loras College. Thanks for being here today, Glenn.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. So we're so glad you're all able to join us today to talk about this subject, but I'm going to pass it over to Casey to talk about specifically developing a student practice plan for remote learning for the pre-K to 5th grade group.
All right. Hello, everybody. So I am going to share my screen. Now, I don't know what everyone's situation was. In the spring, I started out asynchronously, and as the spring went on, we switched to synchronous. As of right now, our district's plan is to go into a hybrid model. So students will be in 2 days a week, depending on the group that they're in, and the teachers will be in school teaching virtually and in person. So for today, I have a couple of things to go through with you. As far as asynchronous lesson planning goes, we've all accidentally become YouTube sensations. I don't know about you, but I know that a lot of my parents wrote many emails to me about how their children are requesting my videos over and over and over again, which is awesome and also a little strange to be in our students' homes. So here is the general sequence that I always go through for my lessons. I have a welcome song and then a vocal warm-up, a movement activity, found sound instrument play, since we don't know what exactly they have at home. So something as simple as if you have 2 things that can click together, then we're good. Also, reading a story. The students just love hearing stories, and hearing stories from a music teacher is such a wonderful thing to have. I tend to incorporate a lot of literature into my lessons anyway, because I just find that the art of literature and the art of music tie really nicely together. Sing a song, any song, pick your song. I try to make mine tie in along with my story in some way or in the previous 2 activities. A mindfulness activity is always a lovely thing to have. There are the Mindful Kids cards that you can purchase. The Calm app for a while was free for music educators. And even just finding a simple breathing activity for them is something really helpful to help ground them, especially during this very stressful time. And then for my older students, I always added directions for their next assignment, or if it was an assignment I needed them to do before the next lesson. Now, not everybody was able to record themselves during the asynchronous process, and not everyone will be allowed to send videos. So I jumped on the bandwagon and made my own interactive Google Slide classroom. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit judgmental of these at first because they seemed a little hokey, a little cheesy, but you know what? The students loved them very much. Getting to explore the classroom, seeing what things were clickable, what things were not. And what I did is I always had a Google form for students to click at the end to tell me what exactly they participated in and to make comments, what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked, what didn't work, what they wish they had more of. So that's something that is definitely worth exploring if you're in a pre-K through 5th grade situation. This is the one that I made for kindergarten through 2nd grade. I made a different one for 3rd through 5th since they're a little bit more mature. Some of the activities in here are things they wouldn't be quite as interested in. And I also made a separate one that was a zoo for my pre-K students. As far as synchronous lesson planning goes, take the time to check in with your students. That's the number one thing. Having some sort of check-in just to see how they are doing, see where they're at. This has been a very challenging situation for a lot of people, but in many ways it's kind of amazing because I definitely had situations where parents don't always know what goes on in the music room outside of our concerts. So getting to see what we do is almost like our own little advocacy moment, which is very helpful. So it's important to check in with your students and just see how they're doing. Next is to set rules and reminders, just like you would in a regular class. It's so important to make sure that they understand that there is structure, because if there is no structure, no rules, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to really feel safe. The safety aspect of any of these is very important. And a lot of it is going to depend on what your school will allow. Some schools say it's perfectly fine for a student to leave their camera off because of safety reasons. Some schools prefer the students to have their camera on. Whatever works for you, works for you. Next, we always start with a welcome song, same as I said before. I can actually give you mine right now. The welcome song that I use for my students is a Polish welcome song. It's actually a Polish tune that my dear friend, Dr. Rob Amshin, changed the text to. So right now, wherever you are, if you could pat your knees with me. Welcome, welcome everyone. We are glad that you are here. We will dance, we will sing, welcome all into our ring. And something as simple as that, it obviously doesn't have to be that. Whatever welcome song you are using, I'm sure is perfect. But that's what I have used with my students in the past, so that was what they were comfortable with. Next, having the mindfulness activity earlier on in the synchronous lesson. This is one of the ways in which I switched the synchronous versus asynchronous lessons, because I knew that it would be better for them to have some sort of grounding and centering before getting into the nitty-gritty of the lesson. And then whatever lesson activity you had planned. So use the structure that you had in person. It was very easy for us when we went online to just kind of go, oh, I don't know what's happening. I guess I'm just going to do this and panic a little bit. But it's okay for us to use the same structure that we had before. Provide visuals for your lessons. Share your screen like I am right now, or have something physical to show them as a representation. The same way we try to accommodate all learners in our classroom, we've got to try to accommodate as many learners as possible in a virtual setting. And provide time for your students to share. Now, anyone who teaches kindergarten, 1st grade even, sometimes, let's be honest, 2nd, 3rd even, knows that sometimes the students just want to tell you a story that has nothing to do with what your lesson was about. And that's okay. It's part of how they connect with us. It's part of how we build the relationships that are so crucial to our class. So give them that time. Give them the opportunity to either share something that they worked on at home, something that they performed with their siblings, or even just to tell you a story about how their day went. I know that this seems unconventional, but singing in Zoom and Google Meet can actually be really beautiful. Is it going to line up perfectly? No. Is it going to have a little element of chaos? For sure. But there are moments where it can really make the whole experience feel more unifying and more connecting for them. And you can have them sing in Zoom if you want. You can have them sing in Google Meet if you want, even with the microphones off, as long as your expectation is for it to be something a little crazy. And that's totally fine. It's perfectly beautiful. You have no idea how many times my students just wanted to sing a cacophonous version of Happy Birthday to each other. And it was great. We're talking a lot about the social and emotional well-being of our students, and providing that opportunity for them is part of it. And with everyone kind of chiming in at once, it creates, it eliminates that vulnerability that you can feel, and that the nervousness, because all of these sounds are popping up. Now, one of the things that I did to make sure that this was possible is choosing short pentatonic or modal melodies for them to sing along with. They're not going to sing through their whole choir piece. I mean, you could, but that's your own personal choice. I wouldn't necessarily have them do that. But if you give them just a little snippet, just like not even 4 measures, just a little something so that they can hear each other, it's really, really wonderful. And provide quick movement breaks. If movement isn't already associated in your lesson, getting the students to stand up out of their chairs and move around a little bit is huge. Everyone keeps saying that sitting is the new smoking, and now we're spending more time sitting in front of our computers than ever before, sitting in front of screens. Get them up, get them moving. Something as simple as, we're going to stand up and stretch, and I'm going to have so-and-so guide the stretches for us. Give your students the opportunity to have that ownership of the lesson. And then, of course, directions for their next assignment. This is where, being able to share your screen and show exactly where you are within your Google Classroom is really, really helpful. And I hope that that's something that you all plan to do. And giving some sort of assignment is really useful when it comes to making sure the students are staying involved in the lessons even after they're over. I know I personally don't tend to give homework for my music classes when we're in person, because we have more time with them than we do in a virtual setting. But I know that a lot of parents have even said it's been nice to have activities for them to do even outside of the scheduled school day. So that is something to think about. So right now in the chat, I'm asking you, doing a little check-in. How are you feeling today? Choose the adorable husky puppy that represents your current feelings. Let's see. How about this? If you want, I will even start. I think I'm a 1 today. And where you are is perfect. That's the other thing. You don't have to be the super happy puppy all the time. It's okay to be the sleepy puppy. It's okay to be the yawning puppy, the confused puppy. Oh, awesome. Oh my goodness. I'm seeing such a crazy mix of numbers. This is wonderful. 4, 2, 9. Amazing. All right. And I actually stole this, sorry, what's the right term? Shared with permission from my friend Ardith Collins. So this is a review of Google Meet procedures. So it's a way to have everything visually in one spot for them. So just like in our music classroom, enter the room and find a spot. I know we've seen it happen where people are picking up their devices and like wandering around the room. And sometimes we end up seeing things in the house that we really shouldn't be seeing. So have them find a spot and stick to it. Enter the room with your microphone on mute. Now, I know in Zoom we have the option to be able to tell them like you're muting upon entry, but unfortunately Google Meet doesn't always have that option. Raise your hand if you have a question. I believe that feature has been added. Well, I guess you can add an extension in Google Meet, and I had all my students do that. So even if it's typing into the chat, I am raising my hand, or even physically raising your hand rather than doing a virtual hand raise, that's totally fine. Just like you wouldn't get up and leave your classroom before the end of class, don't leave the call until it's time. And part of that for me is don't turn off your camera, because I have no idea if you've just walked away from me. I mean, I hope you haven't, but you never know. The next is to be respectful of your friends and what they have to say. In my district, we have the big heart is our theme. So it stands for honesty, empathy, acceptance, respect, and trust. So whenever we mention heart to our students, they know exactly what we're talking about. Follow the conversations and talk about what is being discussed and participate. So like I said before with, sometimes they're going to want to share their own stories. That's totally fine. But make sure that they are hooked in at some point and sharing something relevant to the lesson. Now here is a perfect example of a mindful moment. This is just a GIF that I found. GIF, not sure how to pronounce that correctly. It is okay. And all you do is follow it, breathing in and breathing out. Why don't we try that real quick? Breathe in and out. Lovely. Additional considerations. First things first, who you are is exactly who your students need. You do not have to be the perfect virtual teacher. That is not your job. Your job is to make them feel safe and connected and comfortable. Avoid biting off more than you can chew. It's okay to experiment with different things, different applications, maybe even smart music, just throwing that out there. But try to, if this isn't something that you're very comfortable with, don't pull in a million different resources at once. Pick one or two and see how they go. Try the lessons the way that you would need them. Short and simple. All right, when you record yourself, record it in only one take. For a long time, I tried to make it perfect and beautiful. And you know what? The students liked it better when I was interrupted by my dog or when my husband walked in the middle of my lesson, because it's real. Consider time for both yourself and your students. So this means the amount of time you expect them to have for your lesson, the amount of time you expect them to do additional work afterwards. I try to keep my pre-K videos, because they were asynchronous the whole time, to like 15 to 20 minutes max. And even then it was a lot of get up, sit down, move around, sing a song, find a friend. It was never just sit and stare for that amount of time. And even myself, I've noticed if anything is longer than an hour, I really start to lose focus. And that's on me. But anyway, make sure your videos are kid-friendly. I know that this seems silly, but even just making sure that your background is neutral enough and that there isn't something that the student shouldn't be seeing in the background. And also even in the sense that if you go to post a YouTube video, make sure that it is a kid-safe video, or better yet, embed it into your slides. So that way you can avoid any of those ads in the first place. Allow for some silliness. We can all use a little bit of fun, and I think that the students especially need that. And if that means bringing out your favorite puppet who likes to get into fights with your dog during your YouTube videos, then that's totally okay. Right, Tiny?
I got one more minute.
Thank you, Michaela. Casey. And be willing to admit when you don't know something. A lot of our students appreciate it so much when we're willing to say, I tried using this app, it didn't work, I am so sorry, but you know what? Have you had experience with it? Would you mind working with me right now and we'll try to figure it out together? They love taking part in things like that. So if you're willing to be vulnerable and admit when you don't know something, then you're golden. Last thing, embrace the imperfect. It is okay for the Zoom singing to be cacophonous and a little unsettling, but allow that imperfect to be your new perfect. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. This is included in all of the information. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Goryeb Music. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Casey. I really appreciate that. I'm looking in the chat here before we move over to Anthony. Both Anthony's and Casey's presentations are Google Slide presentations, and I'm going to ask both Casey and Anthony if you can open up permissions. It looks like they're not those links that you provided to me. The permissions aren't open for everyone to see those. So if you could maybe right after this presentation, make sure that they're available for anyone on the internet to view. That would be super helpful. Thank you very much. And now I'm gonna move things over to Anthony. Anthony, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do. You have a whole huge resume right there. I'm super excited to hear from you specifically about middle school and high school and what your plans are for remote learning there.
Awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much, and I hope you guys are all doing really well wherever you are. Yes, as Michaela mentioned, I have experience at the high school, the middle school, and most recently I took on the role as an elementary school orchestra director, where I'm going to be in charge of 4th and 5th grade orchestra, chamber orchestra. I do direct the all-city orchestra, middle school orchestra, which is 6th through 8th. And I do the steel drum band, and I work a lot with my colleagues up at the high school to kind of have like a nice relationship all around with the middle school and the elementary school programs, so that the kids know where they're going as they get older in the program. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to know about me. And Casey, that was a wonderful performance. I got like, hear me say I said a performance. That was a wonderful presentation. I have so many really cool ideas for the start of my school year, which is August 27th, and we were just told yesterday that we are going into full distance learning, at least for instrumentalists. That's going to be very interesting, considering I start about 80 to 100 fourth graders on string instruments. So I'm going to be using a lot of the things that I, started out using, back in March when we went into distance learning, which, by the way, that was such a difficult time. I don't know how we got through it. I remember sitting on the couch, after the first day, and with my little cup of coffee, kind of going, I want my students back. I want my students back. And then I got on the computer like the next week, and I just started doing, virtual lessons, and it was like we had never left school. So I have some really cool ideas for you guys today, and yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. But let's get started. So yeah, so with the distance learning, and especially middle school, high school, their minds are just so all over the place. And they're so quirky, and they're so sarcastic, and they want to have fun with you. And they really care about that relationship, or even just as Casey was saying, feeling safe enough to tell you about what they did that weekend. So I really try to make the goals for lessons as achievable as possible. So what you want to do is you want to first off make sure that you create specific and achievable practice goals for your students. So, instead of saying measures 1 through 160, find a chunk, in those measures and say, okay, does measures 1 through 10, or does measures, 15 through 20 really help me to know what they understand? Is that achievable? Use different types of resources and technology to engage, assess, and monitor your students' understanding. And then, again, be specific. What do your students, need to know? And again, that's so important, especially since we don't have the luxury of time that we once did when we were in person with them. So I found myself really narrowing down, and I said, okay, they need to know this, 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 this. And I was like, no, they have to know this and this. If we get to those other last two, then maybe I can get to that. That's awesome. That's extra. So again, specific, achievable practice goals. All right, different types of resources, technology, and just have fun with it. As Casey was saying, it was such a learning moment for all of us. And you know, this one in particular, video submissions. If you you know, don't know the middle school or high school mind, they do not send in videos willingly. So this was so funny because I actually had a student come up to me and say, you know, Mr. Granata, we should consider using this for when we go virtual next week. And this was before we had any idea that we were going virtual. And I was like, well, what is it? And he helped me set it up. And, you know, literally the kids click on the big plus sign and they go in and they submit a video, whatever it is that you want them to do. And it all goes directly to you. You have to kind of mess with the you know, the platform to make sure that, you know, they can't see each other's, but it's really cute. You know, they can put like an emoji sticker in front of their faces. So that, you know, you can't see their faces. They can blur their faces out. You know, so it's really, it's really friendly to those kids who don't feel comfortable putting themselves on the computer. And I always let the kids know, you know, I deleted it, you know, right away. So yeah, that's called Flipgrid. It's wonderful. It's free. Double check with your school districts. That was very, very useful for me in you know, using it as a form of assessment. So this was one of the things I'm the kind of teacher who I just have to have fun with them and keep them engaged, because they were, I could tell every time they would come on the computer, they were so stressed out. You could see it in their eyes. You know, week 1, they were like, yeah, we're home from school. This is awesome. Week 2, they're like, yeah, this is great. I'm in quarantine. Week 3, they're like, get me out of here, please, please. I want to go back to school, you know? So I was looking for any way to grab them, reel them in, and have some fun with them like we would do in the classroom. So this is something that I call the Mix It Up Practice Challenge, which is actually something that I did prior to distance learning. But I'll give you an example of how I kind of morphed it using the Flipgrid that I was discussing with you guys about. So we had learned how to play in a new key signature, A major. And, you know, for those of you who are unfamiliar with strings, it's a very tedious key signature for string players. Violins and violas have to stretch a lot of their third fingers. Cellos have to do extended position, and basses have to go into half position. No open G strings because of the third sharp. So, you know, we did a lot of work on that through, again, Google Meets, Google Hangouts. We did lessons. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to have some fun with them. So this was the task. We did, students will submit a video on Flipgrid, practicing a piece of music in the strangest, funniest, most creative spots their little minds could think up. I can't even tell you, it was like a slam dunk how much. First off, it was hilarious for me to just sit down with my fiance. We just sat there and with popcorn, and we were watching the videos, and it was great. And then my assessment was they played, you know, pieces in the key of A major, and you know, they had no idea I was using it to monitor their understanding. So it was so much fun. And just to give you some like ideas, they will go all out if you give them permission to. Especially if you make it into this fun, exciting thing that it is. And again, I had participation was outstanding. So I had some kids hang upside down on monkey bars playing a viola. That one scared me. Again, I made sure that they had parental permission. So, you know, I told them don't do anything dangerous, like play out in the middle of the street or on the roof. And of course, I did have kids do those things, but they had parents there. So just be aware of that. But playing violin while floating in a pool on a raft, zip lining in the air, rollerblading, playing in a porta potty. It was hilarious. Laying down with his bass in the tub, and he plucked the piece because he couldn't bow, because he didn't have the room to bow. Playing the cello with 2 parrots on her head. I mean, it was hilarious. They had so much fun. We made it into like a friendly little, you know, competition, and they did an outstanding job with that. So again, finding ways to engage them is wonderful. I accidentally found this website. This guy named Phil Toolga. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this. So he has 2 versions of this website. One is Well, one is free, which was the one that, I was using. And then there's, an added version. But basically what it is, I wanted the kids to understand how to count 16th notes and, hear them and listen to them. And it's a sort of like an easier version. By the way, the link to that is up in the corner there. But you can just write reading rhythms, Phil Tulga. It's really awesome, but it's sort of 4 measures. It's like a little bit of a mini finale, and the kids would just go and they would click notes and drag them into this bar at the top, and underneath they would see, oh, this is beat 1, this is beat 2, this is beat 3, this is beat 4, and then I would say, all right, well, let's put in some 8th notes. And we put in 8th notes, and they would go 1 and 2, and the best part is the play button feature at the bottom. This made them laugh hysterically. The program online has this super mechanical, funny voice that literally, when you press play, he's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they were laughing hysterically. I mean, we had so much fun, especially when you put in 16th notes and they're 1 and that 2, and it sticks. It sticks with them. That's the funniest part about it. So, they have that visual, and then they're able to, click it in and see it on the screen, and then they hear it. And then it becomes easier for them to say it back to you if that's one of your goals. Now, to kind of put this out there, I have a background in special education. So part of what my whole philosophy is with music and music education is, how do we make the musical language as inclusionary, as inclusive as possible for all of our students. 10 years ago, I was a diehard, they have to count it 1, 2, and 3. I wanted them to know how to count it. But I soon learned, just because they can count it doesn't mean they can necessarily play it. It doesn't help a lot of them. So I finally got to this point where I was like, okay, using the Phil Tulga website, I said, all right, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then for those students, if you have to differentiate, I just went in and I said, all right, let's say it with your elementary tas, and then we would say, ta, 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 and then all right, let's do do's instead, and they would do it with me, do, and then I would say, all right, let's make up words to go along with it. I hate COVID. I seriously do. But this has made me think so far out of the box and have a lot of fun with it. And, I actually feel like my kids learned so much more throughout this process, because it really forced me to focus my attention and say, all right, what do they really, really need to know upon leaving, this grade and going into the next grade. So that was pretty cool. And all right, I'm also going to say this, and hopefully I won't get any coffee mugs or things thrown at me virtually. It's also okay for them to write in names, note names and fingerings in. That's another thing. If we look at the musical language as similar to learning English, remember that learning to read written music and applying it to an instrument is not unlike learning how to read English phonemes and writing it down with the appropriate corresponding grapheme. In layman's terms, that means, when you're learning how to read notes, and then you have to apply it to this or this or this, or piano, or whatever instrument it is, or even singing, you want them to feel successful. And if helping them access that new language is, if we can help them access that by letting them write in some note names or fingerings as reminders, I'm all for that. That's part of my philosophy. It really came into good use during this whole school closure thing, and I know about.
I got 2 minutes for you, Anthony.
Cool. All right. So yeah, awesome. All right. So then what we did was they made their own rhythms on that Phil Tulga website with 16 notes. They put it into a notation program. this was all, again, all virtual. I had them use NotePlay if they liked Finale, if they liked Flat for Education, whatever it is that you have that your school system uses. Some of my students did it longhand, which was pretty awesome. So, and then they played it back to me. And, that was my assessment on them understanding, 16th notes. So, and, again, remember to use a variety of ways to assess their learning and understanding. So some students can play it. Some students can sing it. Some students can count it. Some students can notate it. Sometimes there's overlaps. They can do one or more of those or all four of them, but we want to use a variety of ways to assess their understanding. That way they feel like they're making progress. They're learning that language. And then be specific. Instead of saying practice for 30 minutes every day, I had teachers do this to me. Study when you get home. What does that mean? Again, you're talking to a preteen, that mind that can't focus for more than a goldfish time span, so you have to be very, very specific. So instead of saying, practice for 30 minutes every day, I would say stuff like, all right, our goals are measures 25 through 30. Let's try to master the intonation. All right, we're going to try to master the bowings. And then, sometimes as the, older ages, for my more advanced students, I would say, guys, what do you think your goals should be? And they would come back and tell me, all right, which was always pretty awesome because that's a surefire way of understanding if you got your point across when you were teaching them. And again, ask yourself, if I'm a busy teenager with tons of homework and studying, what looks more inviting? Practice for 30 minutes, they'll plow right through it, mistakes and all, or better yet, not practice at all, or a short achievable goal for you. This shows they comprehend what you taught. That always seems a lot easier for me. And I know my students, really appreciated that. And also just remember, I can't reiterate enough. Casey had said it before. There were times when parents came on the screen and they were like, wow, I can't believe what it is you're doing. Like, this is the first time, my daughter has laughed, since this whole closure thing. And they hear and they see the child succeed. We really are that special moment for these kids. And I relish that, and I have a lot of fun with them in, the span of time that I'm given. So, have fun. And again, if you need anything, just reach out. This has been a pleasure. I really hope you guys, got something out of it today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate it. I'm going to move over to Glenn now. Let's see. I'm going to try to get my slides up too, so we can see your title and everything. Glenn, if you can start off with just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then jump right in.
Sure. Well, thanks so much. And Anthony and Casey, just absolutely fantastic. My gosh, your suggestions and your ideas and your creativity and your enthusiasm are just infectious. So thank you for all of that. So everybody, lest you think that I'm just this collegiate director here, let me tell you that I also spent 23.8 years teaching K through 12 music. I started my career in a very small town in Minnesota and ended up doing literally everything. When they gave me a semester of 7th grade choir, I thought I was going to go crazy for a little while there because I had never done any choir work. Ended up having just a marvelous time. Almost sad when our choir director came back from her leave because I had had such a good time with those students. So let me assure you that I've had the experience in all these different levels, and just, we are all in such a strange time. But if I learned anything over the spring, it's that we have an incredible network of people who are supportive and who give us ideas, and who we can call or email or text and just say, hey, what did you do this spring to get by, and learn how to somehow, in a moment's notice, plan for remote learning, which I think we all did the best we could. And I loved what Casey said about accept your own imperfections. Heavens knows I failed tremendously this past spring at trying to run cohesive Zoom rehearsals or even Zoom classrooms. But understanding that most of my colleagues were struggling right along with me, but they could offer me some encouragement and certainly say, hey, here's what I tried and here's what really worked. So know that we are all resources for all of you, and we're certainly willing to help you out in all of that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and go into my Smart Music home, because I did find that Smart Music for me, having used Smart Music for a lot of the past 15 or 18 years, was a great way for me to keep students engaged and playing, but it also seems overwhelming at times. And so especially what Anthony said, keep your assignments simple and brief with very specific goals. I think that is such a key, because if you're not big Smart Music users, sometimes when you get into the program, it's overwhelming. And you find that, well, there are 5,000 pieces of music I can choose from. What do I do? How do I get my kids to have a subscription? How does it all work where I can hear what they're doing? I'll show you two quick examples. Here was my percussion adjunct. And when he went to set up his grade book here, as you can see, he had...
We can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen.
Try it again.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, my entire screen. That's what I want. Share.
Perfect. Yay. Thank you.
Okay, so that looks better. And the only thing is now my... Okay, there we go. Okay, so now can you see all my gradebook?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you can see he sent out, this was my percussion adjunct, sent out many assignments. And while the students did quite well, as you can see, you can also see some of those red scores or the orange scores that weren't, real great. And so I stepped in eventually after about this April 24th date and said, hey, this is overwhelming. And as you can imagine, college students were not always receptive to as much work as we wanted them to do, and as things happened. So be very thoughtful about how you want to use Smart Music. If you do choose to use it in a way that's going to work for you. I'm not quite sure why my home went away, but I'll go back here. But you'll see some of the other things I have in. I do, aside from teaching at the college, I do have a youth wind ensemble that I work with. I also direct my adult community band. If any of you are familiar with the New Horizons band, they're age 50 and over. And we also got closed down, but many of those people wanted to keep playing. So I introduced them to Smart Music, and they loved playing along with different songs like that. So it was really a powerful tool. If you're not familiar with Smart Music a lot, gosh, over here in the categories, all the different tabs that you are able to use, whether it's the literature, the sight reading, the solos, the exercises, all of the method books, there's just so much there. So I want you to know that, you can go to this Find Music tab and hear all those method books, 176 method books. And so what I found that, especially when I was using different method books in applied lessons or even for the technique courses, is that it gave me such a wealth of resources to look at, where the students could, explore on their own. And I'll tell you a quick story about when I was using this with my 7th grade band years ago, is that My students, they would tell me they didn't like some of the literature. I'm sure you've all heard that. Well, we don't like this piece. And I said, well, why don't you then do some searching and you come back with a piece? And one of my 7th graders came back and asked me if we could play the march from the Symphonic Metamorphosis of Hindemith. And I just broke out into a grin and said, I hope someday that you play that piece. Maybe we can't do it quite yet as a 7th grade band. But it was just a great tool to have and for them to do that. This video, which I think you all have a link to, this is one of the projects that we did this past spring, where I had my students, they each submitted their recording. Now, this piece does happen to be on Smart Music, and it's probably a grade 2, maybe a grade 2.5 piece, which was much, below where I had hoped we'd be playing. But I had never tried to put a recording together. And so I assigned this to my students. They all, practiced it, got it ready, used their iPhones to do a video of themselves, and then sent me the parts. This young man that you're looking on the screen was my drummer. He's actually shaking an aspirin bottle because he didn't have maracas at home. And I really credit both of my colleagues who talked to you earlier about take what the students will give you. They were sent home on a moment's notice, and our fall is, I don't know what's going to happen yet this fall. But let them be creative. And so he started this with an aspirin bottle. If you watch the video at some point, you'll see that the aspirin bottle soon goes away as he sits back down on the set. And I think he's on there 3 times. So I had these videos, and I knew nothing about how to put this together. Luckily, again, I had some colleagues, one of my sons actually, who said, Dad, it's not quite as hard as you're making it. Using Audacity, which I knew nothing about, and trying to sync up the videos and the sound. So if you watch that video, you'll see one of my trumpet players, and he's playing along, and the fingers don't correspond to what he's playing. I was like, I'm okay with that. They did this activity. They were proud of something they could put together. And I know that you're all wonderfully gifted people who can probably figure it out quicker than I did. And so accepting the mistakes that you're going to make, but being creative to say, okay, we're not going to play a grade 5 piece of music this fall. Maybe I'm going to play a grade 2 piece where they feel really successful, and we're going to try to put this together. I loved Anthony's stories about the kids doing these practice sessions somewhere else. Gosh, if they want to send it to me outside or by the pool or wherever, I think that's a key that when they're comfortable, they can make some great music. Another thing that I want to show you, I don't know if you're all familiar with the Smart Music blog page, but they asked me in the middle of, I think it was the middle of April or late in April, what I was doing. And I said, well, with my wind ensemble, we're not playing much. We are really trying our best to do some things. But thanks to my 2 sons, who I give much credit to for this project, we did, like the Sweet 16 or the basketball tournament, we had our music listening bracket. And so as you can see here, there are these matchups of these great pieces with, if I click on any one of these titles, it'll take me to a great recording of these pieces. So I would ask groups of 4, and sometimes we were using Zoom, so I'd send them into their own room and said, okay, you 4 take matchup number 1, come back with a winner. And so all kinds of music in here that some great literature there. And, we actually went through this entire thing and had a winner. And I said, okay, even our semifinalists, this will be some of the literature that we will do this coming fall. Now, I don't know what kind of rehearsals I'm going to have this fall. I think it's going to be a huge challenge. I'm actually meeting with one of my deans this week, and we're going to see where I might be able to put a whole bunch of students with lots of space in between it. I think it's going to mean a great big gym, but I'll take any rehearsal I can get right now, because I think that's an important thing for us to be able to do, if it's at all possible for us to do that. So I'll stop. I have one other thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and that is, and maybe you can just kind of raise your hand or pop in a message if you have used Kahoot with your students at all. Kahoot is they're just games, but I had more fun with some of my college students playing Kahoot games. I would type in the history of jazz, and it would bring up some very challenging games. But the cool thing is they get to choose their screen name, and they get to use their phones. And we all know that students love to be on their little devices. And so I think they loved it. We actually got some learning done. But also I recognize that some of our Zoom meetings, my students were just burned out, and I think we all were. And I thought, wow, I've got to find something that is not giving them assignments on smart music or having them play or listening to music and voting on that, or I really needed an activity just to get them to socialize and be engaging. And so I found Kahoot was an absolute lifesaver. And a couple times we actually, and I think all of us could do that, no matter if we're at the elementary level, middle school, high school, collegiate level. It was really hard for all of us, I think, to see our graduates not get graduation. So between a couple of the underclassmen and I, we put together a Kahoot for our seniors. And we found out fun facts about them. And we actually all played this game. And then we had pictures, baby pictures that I had contacted the parents. Please send me a baby picture of, this kid who's now 23 years old and a full beard. And we're going to, put that out on Kahoot. Who is this senior? And it all of a sudden, it was a great way to end our year in the midst of not being able to play anymore. So I think those kinds of things, whether it's a listening activity, certainly we want them to play, but keeping it real, keeping it where those expectations we set can be met, and met sometimes easily is okay. So I encourage you to break out of our own boxes. This is starting my 38th year of teaching, and I am as anxious as a first-year teacher right now because I just don't know. We start workshops next Wednesday, and I have no idea what I'm going to be faced with. I fear that 2 weeks into it, we'll be sending all of our students home again, and I'll be back sitting in my basement wondering what I'm going to do next. But colleagues like all of you, and certainly Anthony and Casey, wow, there are going to be so many things that I took from your presentations today that I'll just modify a little for college students because I know they'll love it. So thank you all for participating, and I'll let Michaela wrap it up here.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I really appreciate it. And I also really appreciate all of your honesty. I mean, everything in front of us this entire next school year is going to be really challenging. But the amazing thing I've seen with music educators, even ever since all of this started in March and April, is the positivity, and we're all in this together. We have so many resources available everywhere. to constantly keep encouraging each other, encouraging the students. It's a huge thing. Stay positive. I know us at Smart Music, we're trying to put together as much content, as much help as we can on our side for the educators. So I'm actually going to ask Anthony and Casey to turn on your mic and your camera again. We're going to get to Q&A in just a second here. Before we do that, I have a couple links I'm going to drop into the chat for you all. I have a certificate of attendance for today's session if you guys need that. And oh, I sent that to the wrong person. I'm gonna send it to everyone here, so now you can see it there. If you need that, go ahead and download it there. And then we also have a link to the Educator Toolkit on smartmusic.com. This is basically a page where we're putting a ton of resources for the upcoming school year. Again, as we all mentioned, there are a lot of challenges ahead of us. So anything that we can do to help you guys, we have a bunch of links and resources there, including webinar archives, upcoming webinars. We have the Compose Yourself resource there, which is some already pre-made lessons and assignments that are totally free for you guys. Go ahead and check that link out. It's really cool. And then also, if you guys can tell us how we did today, if you have any suggestions or comments, anything you want to see in the future for webinars, go ahead and drop that into the comment section of our survey right there. That would be super helpful. I didn't see any specific questions come up. If you have any questions for our presenters, if you can drop that into the chat box, that would be super helpful. I did see the Casey and Anthony's presentations were blocked and weren't shareable, but I believe now they should be open and shareable. If you go on our main presentation slide, you go to this links and resources slide, and you can see it should be linked there. If you have any issues at all, my email is mgraham@alfred.com. Just shoot me an email and I'll make sure you guys get it. Also, everything will be emailed out with the replay link over the next week. So if you feel like you missed it, we will get it to you. Don't worry. I'm looking here in the chat section and I don't see any questions. So, one from Timothy here. How can students transpose into different keys in Smart Music? That would be for Glenn.
Sure. So when you open a title or any of the scales or any of the exercises at all, you go to the top of that screen and where it says display. And then on the right side is where you can choose all of your different key signatures. So
okay,
I don't know if Casey, if you can share that, but it's also if you type in the help and just say changing keys, there's a quick little video that'll show you exactly how to do that. But look for the word display.
Perfect. And then I also, I believe I shared in the chat earlier, the Smart Music Academy is a really good resource for how-tos, how to assign. A bunch of short videos. They're super quick and easy to watch of how to use Smart Music. I dropped that in the chat again for you guys to see. I'm just going to do one more quick question here. Is there a good resource for individualized learning for music? From Daniel. Do you guys have any suggestions from the three of you?
I would say probably your best resource would be first and foremost your students' academic teachers. They're core teachers who know them the most. You can even discuss with administration, guidance. I typically what I do in the beginning of the year is I look at all of my students, and if I have IEPs or 504 plans, I review those and I see, oh, this child has a reading, disability. And then I see what, their teachers have done to help that student in the classroom. And then I try to carry that over into music if that child, because typically those kinds of disabilities will manifest in the music classroom as well. So I really would say in terms of that, there's so many different scenarios, people that you can talk to. There's definitely not one size fits all. It's very much a you kind of have to cut it and paste it and see what works and what doesn't, especially for your students, because what works for one student is not going to work for every student. But I definitely reused things, and and I had conversations with other teachers, and that usually helps get me started.
Definitely. I think it really depends on the situation and the student and all of that. And that's a really good answer, though. Thank you, Anthony. So we are right at the end of our time today. So I'm going to say thank you to each of our presenters for all of the resources that you shared with us for all the different age groups. This is super helpful. Again, I want to mention that we will be sending out the replay for this presentation along with the slides and the links and resources in an email over the next week. So don't worry, you can go back and reference it at any time. But thank you again to Glenn, Casey, and Anthony for joining us today. We will see you next time. Have a great day, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.